Hey guys, welcome to this special edition of the $1 Million Case Study Ask Me Anything edition. I'm excited to welcome on Rolando, who needs no introduction, former $1 Million Case Study, what would you call it? I don't know, a student or, graduate, I guess
student.
would be
Yeah,
a
I
good
think
way to
that's
describe it.
the best way of putting it.
Absolutely. So the purpose of today's Ask Me Anything is for you guys just to answer any questions that you might have regarding the $1 Million Case Study so far. So far, we've covered product research, and then today's episode, we dived a little bit into sourcing. So if you do have any questions, please make sure to drop them into the chat box. I'm just checking them out now. We're also going to talk a little bit about a special offer that Jungle Scout is running. Today is the last day for Cyber Monday, so we will dive into that one in a little bit. But first up, let's dive in and answer some questions. Rolando, is there any questions that you'd like to take to kick things off?
Yeah, let's start off. I think the first question that I see here is from Glenn, asking, "Hi guys, I've found a product on the Jungle Scout extension with an 8 opportunity score, 9 under some keywords. It's evergreen, has bad reviews, but high sales, etc. The product needs improvement, but I'm struggling to find a supplier that will carry them out for me. I think the improvements are pretty reasonable. My question is, if I can't get the improvements I need, should I still go ahead with selling just a factory model and just put my logo on the packaging? Or do you have any advice on how to move forward beyond the opportunity before the opportunity is gone? Thank you." So it sounds like you've done your research and here, Glenn, and that's exciting because you definitely, the different keywords that you're ranking, it seems like you're getting an 8 opportunity score. What I would do is run the numbers, definitely crunch the numbers, and the best way to determine if the product is going to compete well against other products is purchase maybe off of Amazon one sample of a competitor top in that niche or category, and then also buy a sample from the supplier that appears to be the best that you could work with in terms of the whole package, right? They're giving you the best price per unit. The quality seems good enough for you to be able to order the sample, and the supplier works really well with you. So you have all of that, and ordering the sample is always the starting point. And just compare them. You may be surprised that just because the supplier is, they tend to put a little more pride in their work, then that product may in fact be better than what's currently out there. So definitely, it's not something to deter you if they can't make those changes. I always try my hardest to find someone that will work with me. That just goes to show that they're not a trading company, but that they are actually a manufacturer. So that's very important. Make sure it's not a trading company, and that typically is a telltale sign. I will say though, if they don't want to make any changes or adjustments, that they are a trading company, not so much a supplier that actually manufactures from scratch.
Yeah, I agree with that, Rolando. I'm just trying to think if there's anything I can add here. Perhaps I'd emphasize to them or maybe ask them, how many would I need to order in order to get these changes? So you're implying that you will make a commitment to a large order, or that, you maybe state how many you anticipate to sell per year. So that, yeah, you're giving them some confidence that you are serious about this product and that you are willing to order a substantial amount in order to make it worth their while. Maybe with some language like that, they'll be more likely to, come to the table and help you out. Yeah, I'd say that's probably the first thing. Still aim to get your improvements. If not, it still might be, it's hard to say without seeing the product, but it still might be worth launching this product if it still meets all the criteria. But just know that it potentially will have you know, kind of a shelf life where it may not be a home run forever, but it might be something that is very profitable for the next year or a couple of years and whatnot until there's more more competition. The other thing you could do is you could still launch this particular product, and what I would do when you set up the product, add variations. I do this all the time. I'll add variations so that even if I have no idea what those variations will be, it means that you could then add on a variation to that listing later on that is the improved version of the product, and you're not starting again from scratch. So that way, like, launch your product now. It might be a little bit more generic. Then down the track, if you can finally find a supplier that is happy to make your changes, you just continue, you launch that as a variation on this existing listing, and you've got all of those reviews and everything already built up. So it's all under the one roof. So those are probably my thoughts. Rolando, have you found any other questions that we should take?
Yeah, it looks like we have a question here from Zubar, and is asking, if you find a niche that is doing well, high demand plus low competition, low reviews, but you just can't think of a way to differentiate, would you still go for selling a product in this niche? So this kind of ties in with the previous question. I think that you probably could extract a little bit from what we talked about there. Something that I would also like to add to what Lenny mentioned is that you could do some like micro tests. Right now is an environment where you essentially, a lot of suppliers are working with sellers that sell on Amazon, because as we know, Amazon has a 200 unit limit that they just enforced due to the pandemic and keeping up with supply and demand. And so this temporary restriction you can use to your advantage, and that you could actually ask a supplier if they would be willing to work with you on the minimum order quantity, or as we call it, the MOQ. And so you may be able to just get 200 units to just test it out and see how it does for you. And that's probably a very good gauge if the product moves quickly, and even though it's stiff competition. And I'm a big proponent of from day one running some PPC campaigns to be able to immediately put your product on page one from day one. So a couple of those would be my few suggestions. But always try your hardest to reach out to as many suppliers. I know it may seem like a daunting task, but I just love to reach out to as many suppliers as possible, oftentimes in similar niches as well, because you may be surprised that they can actually produce the product, or just doesn't have it in their catalog. But try reaching out to as many suppliers as possible, and let them weed themselves out in terms of who responds more thoroughly to the questions that you send out and how you want to make these improvements. So I would say definitely keeping those things in mind, and maybe, like I said, a smaller order quantity will be a good way to run a little trial on this product instead of like going all in.
Yeah, I totally agree there. Thanks, Rolando. So before we move on, I want to quickly touch on Jungle Scout's Cyber Monday deals, but here is a little video to let you guys know all about it. Only 24 hours left to claim the biggest deal of the year. Right now you can save over $200 on a new Jungle Scout subscription and receive exclusive Cyber Monday bonuses to help you start or grow your Amazon business. Save big with Jungle Scout. Click now to claim your offer. All right, so make sure to head to the link which is in the description below. Today is the last day of our Cyber Monday deals, so make sure to head there to check those out. If you've been following the $1 Million Case Study so far, the first 4 episodes, you're gonna have seen me utilize Jungle Scout in a number of ways, all throughout product research, and then again today when it comes to sourcing, looking for suppliers, and then also tracking them in the supplier database. Now I have to say, coming through this process, it would have been very difficult to make progress with finding a product and everything that I've done so far and that Kerry and I have done without Jungle Scout. It's, if I think to trying to do that all myself, it would have been a lot of Excel spreadsheets. It just would have been really, really difficult. And then especially, the product research tools that help you estimate the sales. That was literally how we went about finding products. Was we had no ideas of what to sell, but we were just going through the product database, the opportunity finder, and gauging all of the numbers. Now, without Jungle Scout, you have none of that. You're flying blind and need to, I don't know how to do it, basically. So you've seen me going through the process, and if you want to follow along with the case study, then I highly recommend you get Jungle Scout, and now is a great time because we have this special on the product. All right.
I was just going to add to that during this time of the year with like Black Friday, Cyber Monday, it's the biggest sale that we discount Jungle Scout, and you really can't do this without a tool to really help you leapfrog and move quickly. Because one of the things that you talk about in today's episode is this analysis paralysis. People do tend to fall into that, and the more hoops that you're having to jump through, the more you're going to find yourself not moving forward or advancing and just kind of stuck in a spot. So that this is one way that I find it useful, is to have the tools that's data driven to help me to determine and make a good solid decision versus relying on just kind of like just shooting into the wind and hoping that I nail something. So I definitely want everyone to know that these deals are designed specifically to help you. There's a training course. I am a little bit biased with the Freedom Builder Bootcamp course, but definitely take advantage of that while you have it.
Yeah, Rolando, I'm glad that you brought up analysis paralysis. I guess that's why with sessions like this, I'm hoping that we're able to help you guys get over that. I know, like your question, Glenn and Zubair, very similar questions like, do I pull the trigger on these products? And it's this interesting balance of, you want to be smart, you want to listen to the numbers, do your research, take your time to some degree in making sure that you're really confident about the product that you're going for. But there's like this fine line where you can end up getting stuck and just not sure whether to move forward or not. So hopefully us talking through these questions with you guys hopefully gives you that extra little, perspective or whatnot to get over the line and move forward. All right, let's jump into another question.
I've got Irfan here asking how to negotiate with Supplier and kindly share format of negotiation. I am new, first time, my experience. You want to tackle that one, Lenny?
Yeah, let's see. So how to negotiate with a supplier. I'm not sure whether you're just talking about the outreach process and the going backwards and forwards, or like negotiating a price and kind of getting it down. If it's the latter, to be honest, I'm not someone that has done like a lot of hard negotiating to get prices down or anything like that. A lot of what I've done, I usually do ask for the best price. And like I mentioned earlier to Glenn, I usually do ask for the best price. I make it known that I am in for a commitment, letting them know that like, hey, I'm here for a long-term relationship. So, what's the best price that you can give me? Really, probably like a lot of the stuff we covered in today's episode. We showed you an example of an outreach letter and the most important things to ask. Make sure you include a picture of your product and point out any changes that you might make, because what you end up finding is that you go back and forth a lot on the little details like, oh, no, I want the tag to be over here, not there, and all these little things. So try to think of every little detail up front, put it all together, or better still on an image, so it's very, very clear. There's no text, I guess, can get misconstrued and so on, but images are very clear. Pretty much a lot of the tips that were mentioned in today's episode number all of your questions so that they can easily reply to number 1, number 2, and you can quickly gauge if they have answered all your questions. Then when you're evaluating these responses, did they reply to all of your questions? How quickly did they reply? Was it within 24 hours or was it like 3-5 days later? And yeah, of course, the price itself is very important. Make sure you reach out to a lot of suppliers. Like I think Rolando said earlier, the more suppliers you contact, the better. That's a really big one because that kind of gives you more leverage. If you contact one supplier, then you kind of have to take their price, otherwise you've got no leverage. Whereas if you've got multiple suppliers, others are willing to go lower, then you can push this particular supplier a little bit harder, and if they, fold, then you've got other options. But when you've got no options, it's very hard to kind of negotiate. But yeah, I feel like, Rolando, you're probably a lot better at negotiating on price, and maybe you've got a few little tactics and things to share when it comes to that, or just anything else regarding negotiating with suppliers.
Yeah, I definitely, I'm probably a little more aggressive on the aggressive side. It's just a matter of, just like I said, I talked a little bit about this earlier about reaching out in the early stages when you're in the negotiating phase. Keep in mind, you haven't spent anything other than the time that you've done your research. You haven't spent anything in terms of getting a sample or communicating directly to suppliers, because Alibaba.com is a free site, and so I think that's why, like, this is one of the things that you can immediately take action on, and without fear of it impacting your business. The more that you can just get out and negotiate, or just send your template to the supplier, the quicker you understand the process and how it works. So what I tend to do is I like to, when I'm on Alibaba.com and I'm doing a search for my product, and I like to sort. There's a little filter where you can sort by the volume of sales, and what that helps me identify is the big players, the key players in this niche. So it just helps me to go quickly through and just send out my template, copy paste my template, and message everyone. Like, in the early stages, I am not disqualifying anyone. They are going to disqualify themselves with their response. How quickly they respond, how thorough they were with their responses. In some cases, some may say we can't produce that product, and that's okay. So little by little, they're weeding themselves out, and then I'm left with maybe the top 10, the top 10 suppliers that I'm willing to work with. And then from there, I can now start expressing that, okay, supplier A is willing to come down about this price. Are you willing to come down a little lower? And I'll be willing to work with you. Always keeping in mind a friendly tone and just building that rapport. So I would say that those are some immediate quick wins that you could do, and all it's going to take is a little more time. But in fact, by allowing them to weed themselves out in this process, it's going to save you a lot of time. So I would say that that's one hack that I love to do.
Rolando, as an example, didn't you recently, or fairly recently, manage to get the price down on the jungle sticks? Is that right?
It is, yes. Actually, so the interesting thing is that you not only do this like in the early stages, right? You tend to ask for a reduced price, trying to find the best, the best supplier. But every time you're going to reorder products, you definitely want to mention, hey, work with me here. Can we, can you come down the price? You know that I'm a repeat buyer. We've built some good rapport here, and so yeah, definitely that's key, is to be able to just every time mention, hey, how can we work this out for a better price? Sometimes, like I like to use current events, right? I'm saying with the increase in tariffs and the competition is getting pretty intense on Amazon. I would really like, if we could work something out and cut a better deal. And 9 times out of 10, they do. And I do this at every reorder. So it's like little by little, chipping away. And because they know that, I'm a long-standing customer, so over time, they're willing to even work with you, sometimes even more. So, and it could, in the early stages, it might be knocking off a nickel, 10 cents a unit, but it all adds up in the end. And little by little, if you're constantly doing that, it's a good price that you'll land on.
Awesome. All right, so on to the next question here. One from Zubair again. Hello all the way from the UK, gentlemen. Appreciate your time. Would you advise staying away from electric or plug-in wall products for your first ever product? Short answer, I wouldn't recommend that. Basically, like, you've got so many options of products to sell. I would personally, especially if you're starting out, just steer clear of electronics products. That just instantly increases the risk of something going wrong. Electronics types products. I think I mentioned this back in episode 1, I think it was like in episode 1. Even something like this mug, if it's like not manufactured quite right, it may not be even that noticeable, or it's not going to change the function that much. But if an electronics product, there's just a lot more chance of something going wrong with it. So I'd probably recommend steering clear of electronics products.
Yeah, I would agree with that as well. Definitely stay clear from it. There's always an exception to the rule, and I think the exception to this rule is once if this is your first product launch, and you don't have the experience in that space, then definitely stay away from it for the time being. It's not to say that in the future you can try these different niches out, but in the early stages, you just want to avoid products that have too many moving parts or too much potential for them being damaged or not functioning, and then that hurting you in the long run as a seller and your seller central account. So in the early stages, you definitely want to keep it simple. And then, like I said, who knows down the road where things may lead. So yeah, that would be
I guess like the way I look at it is that, ultimately you are going to have challenges like this where, you send in a product and something might go wrong with the product itself. It might get stuck in customs, or there's all these random things that just happen as a part of this type of business, or any business really. You are going to experience challenges like this regardless of what you sell. But when you start out, these particular challenges, like if you have a batch of products that get sent in and suddenly you start getting reviews and everyone's saying like, oh, this product's broken or something's wrong, or another one, because my first product was an electronics one and it got held up in customs and it took like a couple of weeks to kind of get it out. Those kinds of issues are really stressful at the time because there's so much uncertainty. You really don't know what's happening. And again, you are going to experience challenges throughout your business at different points, but the longer you can put off, you just want to mitigate the risk of these kinds of things from even happening to begin with. I feel like I'm repeating myself, but hopefully you guys get the point. Rolando, how many units can I send into Amazon? Is it 200? I believe that's the number, isn't it?
Right now. Currently, in certain categories, Amazon has put a restriction of 200 units. It's just because of the whole pandemic, which ultimately Amazon has, as a business, it has definitely grown and it has taken greater market share. It's a very Amazon as a whole is doing great. Challenge has arisen where, of course, now they have so much demand, and so as a result, they're having to hire more staff and really amp up their supply chain. And that's the challenge that they're currently facing. So in order to mitigate that problem, they've put this temporary 200 unit restriction. And like I said, it's certain categories. And ultimately, it's going to go away. This can't be forever. It's something that I always say is don't let that trip you up, because this is something that, of course, many businesses in today's environment are just adjusting to how to deal with the COVID-19 crisis that we've been experiencing globally. And so it's just about adapting. And this was one little adaptation that they did to help them to streamline their process of receiving goods from sellers without really burdening the staff. So that's and one of the ways that they're tackling it, like I said, is that they've just hired in the thousands and thousands of tens of thousands of staff.
Yeah, I think the last time that I was in Seller Central and had a look, it does even have the language there. It says like temporary measures. So, you know, like Rolando said, they're just temporarily dealing with the influx of everything coming in and the demand that they've got. So how does that affect you as a seller right now? Well, it means if you are just sending in your first shipment now, or a newer one or a slow moving one, you will be restricted to 200 units. But will that affect you in the long term? Not really. At some point, they're gonna lift it. You just need to, again, this is, I guess, coming back to what I was saying before about obstacles. This is just gonna be a short-term obstacle. You just need to find a way to kind of adapt and go, okay, I'm gonna work with this 200 limit now, but knowing that it's not gonna be around forever. All right, so
And
we've
you
got
have a video.
very awesome. We've got a bunch of questions here. The next one is where to create logo and pictures for my product. There are lots of different places you can go to. You can go somewhere like Fiverr.com. You can also go to the Jungle Scout Market as well. If you just type in Jungle Scout Market, then you'll junglescoutmarket.com. Essentially, that's similar to Fiverr, where it's this marketplace of freelancers, but freelancers specifically for Amazon. These are all people that have had experience doing product research, doing product photography, creating logos and branding specifically for Amazon sellers. So they know the requirements for Amazon sellers, particularly when it comes to things like photos and so on, where there's very specific specifications. These are people that have created product packaging for Amazon sellers. So that's a really great place that I'd recommend as well. Another one, which you'll actually see in the $1 Million Case Study coming up in the next couple of episodes, is we actually use 99designs.com. This is a website where you host a design contest. You basically post a brief of what you're after, and then designers will send in submissions and kind of compete to win the contest, and then whoever you select ends up getting paid. So it's a cool way to get lots and lots of different designs at once. But yeah, those are a few options. I don't know if you have any others to add on, Rolando.
No, I think that pretty much covers it all. I think we go to the next question. I have it lined up here from Richard. It looks like he's asking, can I use TransferWise account or do I have to get a credit card? I'm struggling to get clarification on that. Thanks. Right. If I'm not mistaken, Richard, I imagine you're at the phase of you're now reaching out to suppliers and you're actually looking to get a sample. Typically with the sample, they accept a wire transfer, or they will actually you could pay via PayPal, as well as through Alibaba's portal. You can use their transfer portal. So it's not required that you use TransferWise. I don't know if that's what you're asking, if it's a requirement. And then the credit card ordeal, that should not be an issue as well. The only time that would come into play is if you're trying to link your credit card on your Seller Central account. You will need a bank account tied to your Amazon Seller Central account, and then you could have your credit card on file as well for you initially like your PPC, anything like that.
Yeah. Let's see. So yeah, I guess like Rolando said, it depends on what you're asking for. But let's say you're talking about just selling on Amazon, or selling or connecting up Seller Central. because I don't know if you're from, from outside the US, which is, I was in Australia when I first started. And so one of my big questions is, how do I get a US bank account to receive my money? And so long story short, the options that I discovered were World First, which were really great, and also Payoneer. They allow you to essentially set up a US bank account, which you can then plug those details into Seller Central and get paid in US dollars. The only other option that I had would have been to get my US dollars sent to Australia, to an Australian bank account, and it would get converted into Australian dollars. Then when I wanted to use it to pay suppliers, I'd have to convert it back to US dollars, and you would lose all this money in the currency exchange. So yeah, options like Payoneer are great. World First is good. I haven't used them in a little while. I've recently, or for the last year or so, been using Payoneer. But I've also started using TransferWise as well. And my understanding is that you can do the same thing. You certainly can set up a US dollar bank account, and I believe that you could use that on Amazon as well. So if you're international, you do need to find an option like that, or it's best to find an option like that. And then, like Rolando said, you might need a credit card for Seller Central itself. Personally, I've never had a credit card on Seller Central. I signed up and used a debit card. Now, I don't know if that's, if I've just got grandfathered in and that's on my account. What I've heard is similar to Rolando. Of recent times, they're being strict on you needing a credit card. I guess you can always try a debit card if you don't have the credit card option. And, the worst that will happen is that they'll say that you need to add a credit card. But that's one thing to note with Payoneer and TransferWise, is that they do offer debit cards, which is really nice, because then you can put all of your business expenses through those accounts. So hopefully that helps, but if you need slightly more clarification, then let us know, Richard. All right, next one. Where do I get an ASIN or SKU for the product? Do you want to take that, Rolando?
Yeah, so typically what's going to happen as far as getting your SKU is you want to start with a company called GS1. I think it's gs1.us. Is that correct? I think that's the site. And so what you're going to do there is essentially set up an account and start to be able to get a barcode. So the first thing is a barcode, or more like a UPC. That code in itself, the numbers that it generates, I'm not talking about the image type barcode with the lines. It's more, you're going to assign a specific number to this organization. They're going to specifically assign a number to your product. And so that way it can be searched throughout the world. And that's why we do this, is to basically register the product with an organization, which in this case, GS1. Then from there, when you go to create your listing, that's where it's going to ask if you're using a UPC code. And you just type in the code that was generated, and that will create the SKUs on Amazon, because they're going to be different from the GS1 number. It's going to essentially, for internal purposes, Amazon needs an FN SKU. And so that's basically going to be the identifier of your product within Amazon's warehouse. That is the only barcode that needs to go, or the only SKU that needs to go on your product if you're selling through Amazon. The original UPC is just to create the listing and to register your product with the global selling community. And then Amazon is going to designate its own barcode for your product, and that's what you would provide your supplier to put on the packaging. And essentially, once Amazon gets your product, they can scan in your product, and as many units as you send to them.
Sweet. All right, on to the next question from Ryan. After Amazon fees, inventory purchases, shipping, and other expenses, what profit margin do you try to seek? Currently, I'm around 25% and I'm fine with that, but want to hear your thoughts. I guess my short answer is, yeah, that sounds pretty good to me. Again, the Amazon fees, in the $1 million case study, I talk about the rule of thirds. And this is just a very ballpark, rough way when you're doing product research to gauge whether this could have some profitability or not. And that is, you want your landed cost, which means the product and shipping cost, to be about a third. Then your FBA fees will be roughly a third, and then you're left with roughly a third. So that's like, what, 33%. But if you can add all of your expenses up and still have about 25% left, that's a pretty healthy margin. Obviously, you always want to get higher if possible, but yeah, I think, I think 25% is pretty good. If it started creeping lower than that, then I'd start to get a little bit worried, but yeah, I think that's pretty good. I don't know if you've got any thoughts yourself, Rolando?
I think that's a quick way to identify is that rule of thirds. It's definitely a good way to see if your product is initially profitable. So it's like a quick and easy way to identify what, how healthy this product would be, how viable of a product would be. The key thing is to really, really, really spend some time on crunching the numbers, like down, to every penny, to make sure that you don't hurt yourself and that you missed a fee, maybe quite possibly that Amazon charges, or a fee that might be tied to from the supplier and so forth. So I would definitely just crunch the numbers, and once I'm happy with that, once I'm happy with the result, definitely, anything, I would say even like 20% and above after you did your due diligence, and you factored in PPC, some budget for PPC as well, because that's also going to initially require an investment. Also keep in mind that when you first launch, you're going to have more of a startup expense, but as time goes on, because you can work with the price, you could do like little price increases, you could do little tweaks to your listing to optimize it better. That you may be able to increase your profit margin, as well as maybe buying bigger bulk orders from your supplier. That will always bring down the price. So there's things that you can do to improve, but always start at the base level with a very healthy margin, and then kind of work from there.
Yeah, one thing just to add on to that, Rolando, is your profit margin is really important. The other number that's useful to kind of take a look at in this situation is your ROI, or return on investment. And if you use the Jungle Scout FBA calculator, it just easily shows you what that is. And so what it is essentially what percent, like how much are you getting back from how much you're actually putting in. So you might have a 25% profit margin, but what is your ROI? And the target ROI would generally be about 100%, or at least 100%. Meaning if you're paying $10 to get your product shipped and created, that's how much you physically have to put in. You don't count your FBA fees because that sort of comes out of the final sales price, but you're physically putting in $10. Ideally, you'd want to be getting at least $10 or more back, okay? So that's what ROI is, and I would aim for at least 100% there as well. All right, so next question from Enigma. I've identified a great product that requires a minimum order quantity of 3,000 units on Alibaba, which is very risky. Is there another platform for suppliers, or what would you do in this case? So I can quickly start this off. For one, no, there isn't really another platform. Alibaba is going to be by far the biggest and the best. You can try globalsources.com is another. It's probably like the second biggest that I know of. There's not really many other options. Alibaba is usually the place to go just because of its size. What would I do in this situation? This probably comes down to communicating more and communication and negotiation with the supplier to get those 3,000 units down. So really just like, if you going back to the things that Rolando and I were mentioning earlier about negotiating with suppliers, letting them know that you're here for the long term. Usually I've found anyway that suppliers are usually pretty receptive to, negotiating their minimum order quantities if you communicate with them well. So yeah, I would just still try to push to get that number down. Ideally, just let them know that you would like it lower now, but in the future you'd be open to, ordering a higher amount. So that's probably what I'd say.
Another great way to possibly venture away from Alibaba is if looking in different countries, different markets by using our supplier database. You'll want to enter your product, your niche, inside of supplier database. This could generate alternatives, and you'd have to reach out to them directly. I prefer, in terms of just one and done, going into Alibaba.com and reaching out to as many suppliers as possible. Like I said, even some that may seem like they're a little off of the niche that you're currently in. They may be able to produce your product. The key thing is, of course, you do want to avoid a mold cost. Meaning they could charge an additional fee if they have to basically create it from scratch. Whereas if they are already creating this product, then you wouldn't have that mold fee. They can go ahead and just slap your label on it. But if you are making some tweaks and modifications, you're going to have to create a mold no matter what. But yeah, so that's another alternative that if you haven't tried that out, that's a possibility, is to use our supplier database and see if there's any other manufacturers that you can get in touch with.
Ahmed asks, is it an absolute necessity to put our brand on the product packaging? Good question. Actually, this is something that I'm not 100% sure about. I had a feeling that it was necessary for you to put that on your product, or at least on the packaging. I don't know if you know the exact answer. I suspected that you are meant to do that. I would recommend you do that anyway. Sorry, Rolando?
What may happen, especially as you are building out your business, your Amazon business, you're going to need to get brand registered. I mean, it's just, I highly recommend it. It's only going to help you that much further in being able to increase your conversion rate and just create like more content to provide for your customers. So I would say that yes, it is a requirement, because they are going to ask, as part of the process of creating a private label product, is they're going to ask for images with your branding, your logo on it, and they're going to ask for for additional information, trademark information. That's down the road. That's nothing to be concerned of. But I just like to start out on the right footing. At a minimum, that's my basis. At a minimum, that I get my branding on the product. I might be happy with the supplier. I might be happy with all my initial research on this product. But at a minimum, I'd get my logo on the product, and then take the next step down the road for brand registry. You will want to be brand registered.
Yeah, that's a good answer. All right. Sharik says, how much do you consider the opportunity score in reality? All right. I can start off on this one. I use the opportunity score as a starting point. So, you actually, if you go back to episodes 2 and 3 of the case study, you'll see Carrie and I doing product research, and we would often, find something in the product database. We would click over to Amazon to see it on Amazon, then we'd run the extension. The first thing that we would do is look at the opportunity score, and that just sort of gives you an initial gauge as to whether this could be a possibility or not. So if it's a super low score, 2, 3, 4, maybe 5, then most likely it's not gonna be a good opportunity. If it's a higher number, then it's like, oh, this is interesting, let's look into it more. So I always look at the opportunity score first, but in reality, I never stop there. I never go solely off the opportunity score. I wouldn't recommend anyone to do that. Again, the intention is just to give you that initial first step of like, oh, this looks like it could be a good opportunity, and it gives you reasoning. It says high demand and low competition, okay, or whatever the case may be. It gives you initial parameters to kickstart. So I often see people mentioning or talk to people that are like, oh, I found a 7 or 8. Should I launch this product? And it kind of sounds like sometimes people tend to put too much reliance on the opportunity score. It's not intended to make your decision for you. You still need to layer on a lot of questions and thinking yourself. Again, in episodes 1 and 2 in particular, we go through a lot of questions to ask yourself because every category, every product will have slightly different slightly different things that you need to consider. There's no algorithm out there from Jungle Scout or anywhere that can literally tell you to launch a product or not. So I wouldn't use the opportunity score in that way, just again as a starting point. Hopefully that makes sense.
Awesome. Next question. This is awesome. We have quite a few questions in here. Thank you everyone for participating. We appreciate you dropping in your comments here, your questions. I'm gonna make a quick plug. If you're enjoying this format of the Ask Me Anything, definitely crush that thumbs up button.
Yes.
That helps us know that you want more of this, and possibly we can work with you on that down the road. So Sharik asks, how much do you consider the opportunity? Oh, you just answered that one. I'll give you my answer. I'll say the same, just as Lenny says, it's just a starting gauge. It's not the end all be all.
Yeah.
So definitely, it just helps to kind of speed if you can quickly look at a product and see if it's viable or not. You're going to definitely have to dig deep and crunch the numbers. And that's when you start getting to your decision. Your deciding factor comes down to you doing your due diligence with everything, taking into account everything. It looks like the next question. Do you have the next one lined up, Lenny?
Yeah, I got it right here. So this one is from Alliston. Some review about Taobao compared to Alibaba. It seems most used by Chinese. To be honest, I don't really know much about the website. That's my understanding as well, is that it's used a lot by the Chinese, or mostly by Chinese. Again, I don't know too much about it. So I can't really weigh in on that one. I don't know if you've had anything additional, Rolando.
No. And let's go to the next question. Looks like from Sharik, asking if one is willing to invest heavily into a product where the market is saturated, does the opportunity score matter? And should it become a basis for whether we should go for the product or not? So I guess we kind of touched on this earlier, that the opportunity score is just the starting point. It's not the end all be all. It's just a good quick reference. We like quick answers sometimes, and if we see that a product is saturated, then of course we want to find out why, and so we can dig a little deeper and see why is this product saturated, what's triggering the opportunity score to not be a good one, a good result. Let's see here. You have the next one there, Lenny.
Yeah, let's see. I suppose just to quickly add on to what Rolando said, if you're willing to invest heavily into a product, into a market that's saturated, you're willingly making the decision that this is a highly competitive market. You understand that it's going to take more time, more money. You're going to have to be really aggressive and it's going to take longer to push through in that market. Then if you're willing to do that, understand the risks, then you can pretty much throw out anything that we say. When we say like, oh, it needs to have low competition or it needs to have this or that, we're just trying to give you guys starting guidelines. And once you understand those, you can sort of like break the rules once you know the rules a little bit. But we're talking more like the best recommendations for people beginning, to start out. So hopefully that gives a little bit of context there. Then
Rodex
David,
says you should offer. Oh, sorry.
oh, you go.
I was just gonna say Rodex mentions you should offer a proper course on Amazon. I guess step by step. We do. We actually have lots of free content if you go to junglescout.com to our blog posts. Also here on YouTube, we have tons of content, tons of free resources available in video format. And we actually also have a step-by-step course, which is the Freedom Builder Bootcamp. I'm a part of that. I'm one of the coaches in that team. We do monthly coaching calls with Greg Mercer. And so that would be a good starting point. Also within Jungle Scout, we also have the university as well, academy. And so you definitely want to dive into all of that content. The key thing is don't it's easy to go down a rabbit hole and get lost among the content. Stick with the plan. If you're going to go through the academy, make sure you go through it from the beginning. There's an A to Z program there that you can walk through. If you're going to run with Freedom Builder Bootcamp, then definitely go through all that content and follow along as you're doing this, because it's so easy to get lost in how much content there is out there and and just get misdirected. So we try to make it as easy as possible for you by laying out the content plainly with Freedom Builder Bootcamp. So that's just an option available to you. And Lenny mentioned, we'll put it in the description. We're currently having our Cyber Monday sale. It ends at midnight tonight. So if you want to take advantage of the deals that we currently have, just there's a link within the description to head over to take advantage of those deals.
All right. The next question is from David. Would you use a supplier that is already selling on Amazon some some other products or the same products but with differences? So my answer would be, yeah, I wouldn't stray away from that. In fact, that is one of my favorite ways to verify a supplier, because if you can figure out that this supplier is selling or is supplying this particular product on Amazon, then you can go check out the reviews for that Amazon product, and that's the best gauge of the product. If there's a lot of 5-star reviews, then you're like, great, this supplier makes quality products. On the flip side, if there's lots of low-star reviews saying it broke or this or that, then you know that they don't make great quality products. So I wouldn't shy away from the fact that a supplier is supplying to someone else on Amazon. I think you're probably going to find that most suppliers are going to be supplying to somebody that's selling on Amazon. I don't know if you have anything else to add to that, Rolando?
No, I think we could go on to the next question here. Manal asks where to go to create a logo and pictures for my product. The easiest way is to go to Jungle Scout Market. Jungle Scout Market is going to have vetted, Amazon tested freelancers. So I would definitely I'd go with that route first, just because you're dealing with freelancers that understand. For example, if you're trying to get product photography, they're going to understand the dimensions. You're not going to have to provide that information to them up front. They're going to understand what angles to take the picture from, provide you multiple options. But there's everything from freelancers on helping you to create a logo, to helping you with your product photography, all the way up to PPC, and you name it. These freelancers are there and ready to work with you. That's probably my first outlet. If I don't have design skills, say for example, or if I don't want to deal with the product photography myself, then definitely using a professional at the market would be your ideal first option.
Great. Next question, Sharik asks, what should our strategy be when going into an established market with high competition? So if you have decided you want to go into a highly competitive market, usually, firstly, why would you want to do that? Usually it's because there's just insane demand. So that once you do push through and you become one of the big dogs in this competitive market, once you get to that point, you get a lot of sales. It's just a lot harder to get there. So what should your strategy be? Essentially, you just need a lot of money and a lot of patience. What I would do is I would go into Keyword Scout, type in the main keyword that you're targeting for your product, and it will tell you a number. It'll say recommended giveaways. So this might be 20, 30, 50 units. And what that means is in order for you to rank on page 1 for that keyword, you need to be selling at least that number of units for at least a couple of weeks, essentially. So I would use that number as a starting point. So it's like, okay, that number might be 50 units per day because, you know, this product sells a lot. You need to be selling 50 units a day, but your competitors have thousands of reviews. You've got 0 reviews. What can you do? How can you get those sales? You essentially need to use a combination of strategies such as probably like really heavy PPC. You might want to combine that with a lower price. You probably want to undercut everyone else in the market just so that it makes your product an irresistible offer. Because remember, you just need sales volume. And you need to be prepared that you might be running at a loss, okay? If you're trying to go into a competitive market, I wouldn't have the expectation of making profit from day one. You're probably gonna need to push your product out at a loss, at break even, or maybe even a loss, to just sell lots and lots of units to start building up the reviews. And you're gonna have to be willing to do this for a long time in order to get a substantial number of reviews and start to rank organically and, you know, start to increase your conversion rate where people will buy your product over these other ones that have thousands of reviews. So it is a really long, tough process that's gonna require a lot of time and a lot of money. Yeah, you'll most likely just need to be prepared to lose money for quite a while until you can break through. Once you do break through and you get into that top page of results, then you might start getting, you know, although you could be getting up to those 50 sales per day organically. That's when you start to reap the benefits of being in a competitive marketplace. But until then, it's potentially gonna be a really tough slog. So hopefully those things help you out. You know, high PPC, use coupons, anything you can do to discount your product, get it out the door to more people. Anything else to add to that, Rolando?
Just essentially that that it is going to be a little bit more investment heavy with the on the PPC side. So prepare for that. Budget for PPC to be competitive. Otherwise, you're going to be on page 1,000 and no one will ever find you. So you really want to, you know, you want to factor that cost, that additional cost. It's going because it is competitive. You're going to be, you know, as far as your bid is going to be higher. So that's very important to keep in mind that it's going to be a little bit more investment intensive. Bear that in mind. That's why we don't recommend it. We recommend, you know, finding something low competition that's priced right and that has good demand. That's always I'd say that's the winning formula. I'm not saying that that's the only formula, but that's the winning formula for someone who's just getting started and doesn't have, you know, the experience in how to run a successful PPC campaign. So something to keep in mind.
All right. So,
All right.
oh wow, time's ticking on. We still got some questions here, so let's try and smash through a few of these. Adam says, can I launch 4 different brands inside the same seller account? If yes, how does it work? And any pros and cons? So yes, you can have different brands under the one seller account. Keep in mind that your seller account, you have a store name and then you have a brand name. So you only have one store name, and that doesn't really matter what it is. That can be anything. But when you list all of your products, they each have a brand name. And so each product can have a different brand name. So that's how you can sell multiple brands in the same seller account. But keep in mind that, you know, as Rolando mentioned earlier, you should consider getting Amazon brand registry. This unlocks a whole bunch of features on your listing, provides greater protection. It's a much better long-term strategy because Amazon basically gives you a lot of benefits. Now, the trick is that you need to have a trademark in order to get brand registry. So think about it, if you have 4 different brands, or the more brands that you have or want to have, you're gonna need to apply for a trademark for every single brand, okay, in order to get brand registry. It's a little bit of a bummer, but that's just how it is. So if you really don't need to have multiple brands, then I'd suggest just kind of having one umbrella brand. You know, ours at Jungle Scout is Jungle Creations, and that way we can sell kind of whatever we want under that one brand without having to have trademarks for every single brand that we want to sell. So that's what I'd, suggest on the one hand. But in terms of like pros and cons, the con of, let's see. So yeah, I guess you can have multiple brands under the one account. One of the other cons to that is that if you want to sell your business down the line, you can't really split those brands or products from that account. It becomes really messy at that point. So if you wanted to sell off, you've got one particular brand of clothing or whatever, tables, whatever it is, you want to sell off that part, but maybe maintain the other parts, it's very hard to split it. So keep in mind from the get-go whether you're looking to sell this business down the line. If so, you might want to separate your brands into different seller accounts if you do want to have different brands. So hopefully that helps. I'll dive into the next question. And that one is, if you're planning to enter a medium competition niche, but the prices of the product are from $18 to $40, but every product is sold by different quantity and material, how to find the ideal price and quantity? Yeah, this is a good one. I actually experienced this recently where I was looking at a product. You'll find out more about this, but this is actually, we're gonna talk about this in the $1 million case study. This product had a whole bunch of variations, a lot of different sizes and so on. And they sold lots of different sizes and lots of different numbers per pack. So like a 1 set, 2 set, etc. So how do you know which one to sell? What I did was I essentially just exported the first 2 pages of results using the Jungle Scout extension, and I pretty much just marked or tallied up like, this is how many are in this size, this is how many are in that size, and I just kind of added them all up, and then from that I kind of gauged like, okay, this seems to be the most popular size because there's the most listings, and that's how I came up with the most popular variation out of all of the ones that were present. And that's what I went with. So it was pretty like rudimentary, nothing crazy, but not super scientific, but it kind of worked for me. So hopefully that helps you.
Another way to kind of drill down into it as well is I like to go into the bestseller ranking and find the exact niche that this product is found in.
Yeah.
Because you'll have your top level categories, and then it starts going down to, let's just say that it's dog bowl. Like it'll probably be a category of dog bowl. And if you click on that, it'll bring you to the 100 best sellers in that category. And what I like to do is just see who is the number one spot. What size, what dimension, what are they doing right to be number one? Because at the end of the day, our end goal is to be number one in terms of our category. It's not always going to be the case. We'll probably be 10 or number 12. That's still a good spot to be in, but we want to emulate what the number one seller is doing in the category, because they're obviously doing something right. And even the number 2, the number 3, like just take the best sellers in the category and see what the price range is between them. See what is it that they've done to differentiate themselves, as well as go into their listing and look at the reviews, look at the negative feedback that they're getting, and you can actually you can outmaneuver them by making those improvements that they probably haven't iterated on yet. So, but mark my words, they're definitely, if they're a big seller, then they're always obviously looking at their customers and their customers' needs and trying to identify how to best um, serve their customer. You need to have that same mentality. You need to go in it with the same attitude of, this, at the end of the day, this is, all about your customer and delivering them the highest quality product, so that in turn it's like, the reviews will naturally start to flow in, because customers just love your product. So that's something, just a quick and easy win there as well, how to find some of that type of information.
Definitely. All right, so we're just going to answer a couple more questions before wrapping up. So I'm just going to go through. There's one here from Ryan. Do you have a target amount of time to keep products in stock, or a ratio of lead time to in stock? Currently, I do about a month, but sales have been growing recently and it's pretty quick out of stock. Yeah, generally, I'd say at least a month. So, you can actually use Jungle Scout's inventory manager and it helps you calculate this. Essentially, you're trying to order for, how much is your lead time? How long does it take from the day you order to get the product into Amazon? So let's say that it takes 30 days for that entire process. Then you want to additionally stay in stock for at least another month. That's kind of what I say is always add on about a month. So that will then tell you need, 60 days worth of stock. And it will tell you how much you need to order and when, based off of your sales history leading up to this point. So if you start selling more and more in the last 15 days, then inventory manager will tell you to get a move on, because if you continue at this same rate, you're going to run out sooner. But yeah, to answer your question, I generally do the same thing. I try to get at least an extra month's inventory on top of the lead time. But if you've found that your sales have been going up recently, I would maybe bump that up to go, okay, this time maybe I'll order an additional 6 weeks worth instead of a month. But yeah, I think a month is a good starting place.
Awesome. Looks like Manal has the next question.
I think we answered that one earlier, actually.
Oh yeah, we did. That's right. Let's see.
Let's jump down to this one here. Let's see. So Ahmed asks, on some product pages on Alibaba, automatic quotes are automatically generated, including shipping, which is sometimes cheaper than the quote I make on Freightos. Is it safe to go with that? I can't think offhand that the quotes that you, actually, I think maybe I have seen them. To be honest, I've never done that, so I don't know for sure. It might be fine to go with that option. I guess what I would say is until you actually pay the money or get the final number on the final screen, I wouldn't necessarily trust that that's the correct price until you get to that point. But what I will say is that when I've ordered through my supplier and I've gotten them to I've asked them to get quotes for me and kind of using their freight forwarder essentially. I do often get cheaper prices than going to a freight forwarder myself. So a lot of the time I've got my supplier to organize the shipping for me because it has been a little cheaper than organizing a freight forwarder myself. The downside I see to that is that you have less control over that process. If there is an issue, you end up sort of relaying messages through your supplier and you don't really have that connection with your shipment. Whereas if you go with a freight forwarder, you have direct contact with them, or you should have contact with them all the way. So you can, talk to them directly if there are any issues that arise. So I would say if the difference isn't that significant, I would just go with a freight forwarder. If there's a fairly significant savings by going with the Alibaba price, then maybe I would consider it. That's, really up to you, I guess. I don't know if you've got anything else to add, Rolando.
I'd say that typically, I've always recommended to use a freight forwarder when it comes to shipping it by sea. Now, there is circumstances where it may be a light enough product with not as many units, And so working with your supplier to ship it via air may actually be, prove to be beneficial. It's always going to be a little pricier if you're shipping by air. Definitely, once we start talking about these topics, Lenny will be able to share, a little more of a breakdown of what the general rule of thumb is of when to go by air or by sea. But I would say that the suppliers, they're generally really good at taking it end to end if it is by air, because they're just going to use a company like DHL to ship it, and so it's a very streamlined process. But when it comes to shipping by sea, they may not be as effective. They're great at, they have the supply chain really good from their warehouse to the port, but beyond that, they probably don't have well established connections of different shipping companies and so forth, and the hassle of having to deal with customs and all this, that ultimately falls on that would fall on them, or more so on you, because if a problem arises, they probably aren't going to take the active measures to rectify something. So I would say the simple answer: if you're shipping by air, you can work with your supplier. If you're shipping by sea, work with a freight forwarder. It just eliminates a lot of the headache of getting your items through customs and then eventually to Amazon's fulfillment center.
Yeah, I think that's a really great rule of thumb. Definitely go with a freight forwarder for sea shipping, because you save a substantial amount of money on sea shipping anyway, so it doesn't really matter. But one thing that actually came to mind to me is I'm currently actually getting a shipment by sea, and I went with my supplier's shipping. One downside of that, though, and I've had it happen a few times, is that they've given me like a UPS tracking code, but I think that's for when it like lands in the US. So it's been a few weeks now, and I've literally got no status for my product. And yeah, what essentially will happen is, I think when it lands in the US, which is like a month later, then my tracking code will update, and then I'll know that my product actually exists or is still there. But yeah, that's kind of like one of the downsides, is like I've left it up to my supplier, but I've kind of got no information now. Whereas, yeah, it'd be a little bit different if you use a freight forwarder. Like if you use Flexport, like we've recommended in the past. Rolando shows us how to use Flexport in the last $1 million case study. They're really great in terms of like you can actually see your product on a map the whole time. So there's like little benefits like that too that are really handy. Fortunately, I've gone through this process before, and I just understand that, like, yeah, my product will rock up in the US, but if you're a first timer, it can be really scary that you've like paid this money and your product's apparently out at sea, but you don't have any record of it. So yeah, keep that in mind as well. All right, I'm gonna try to like smash through a couple more questions, and then we're gonna wrap it up for today. Tom asks, hello all, do I need to stick 2 barcodes on each product, an FN SKU, an EAN, or just an FN SKU? Rolando actually mentions this earlier, so go back to that section on the replay, but you only need the FN SKU on your product for Amazon, okay? You need the UPC barcode in order to create your listing. After that, you don't need it anymore. You then need to download and stick on the FN SKU from Amazon. That's the only thing you need. Let's see. Right. I'll see if there's any other.
So I dropped a just to for UserBear. I dropped a link on a blog post that's going to come really helpful because we're running out of time. But this blog post covers startup costs, selling on Amazon in detail. So and what what you should expect in terms of how much to invest as a starter. So definitely check that out. And I also dropped. Someone was asking on here about our Cyber Monday deal, which ends midnight tonight. I dropped the link on, it's under there under the Black Friday Cyber Monday deal. Click on that, it'll take you directly to the different plans. We currently have 4 plans that we're running, and you could look at that. You could look on there and see which one applies best for you. So definitely take a look at that.
Awesome, yeah, and a shout out to Victor, who says, I just got my Cyber Monday deal. That is
Woo.
awesome, Victor.
Congrats.
All the very best. Make sure to go through the $1 Million Case Study episodes so far. Now's a really great time to start because you can follow along with me as the episodes come out each week. Also, shout out to Glenn in here. He's been a very active member of our $1 Million Case Study group. We'll also make sure that that's in the description as well so that you can join that one. Totally free, but essentially you can join in as I'm going through the $1 Million Case Study. You can too at the same time. We can all do it together and support each other. So make sure to join that group as well. I'm gonna answer one last quick question because it's kind of connected to the last one, and then we're gonna wrap it up for today. And so that one is, do you send the UPC barcode to the manufacturer? No, you don't necessarily need to do that. Basically, if you plan to sell your product on different channels, maybe you want to sell it on Shopify in your own store, or I don't know, maybe Walmart or somewhere else, then it might be a good idea to have your UPC barcode printed onto your packaging. But if you're only planning to sell on Amazon, you don't need to have your UPC barcode on your packaging, so you don't need to send that to your manufacturer. And again, also to clarify, all you need to send to your manufacturer is the packaging template, so that they can make packaging and put your product in it. So what we often recommend is that you get custom packaging and you get your FN SKU, this is from Amazon, printed on there directly. Otherwise, you just have to get stickers put on there, and usually your supplier will do it for you for free. Or you can get Amazon to put it on there for 20 cents. Actually, I think it's gone up to like 30 cents now, but Amazon can do it for you. But it's easier just to get it on the packaging design itself, and then you never have to worry about it again. So hopefully that made sense.
And I was going to add to that. I know, to add to the confusion, right? There's so many different acronyms here. There's the UPC, there's the FN SKU, and someone mentioned the ASIN earlier. And what the ASIN is, it's literally the alphanumeric code of your product listing. So that it's literally the listing and how you're identified on Amazon. And so that's not what goes on the product. That's just more for searches online, and for you to have be included in the library, right, of different products that Amazon sells. However, the FN SKU is the barcode, almost like what you would see when you scan a UPC code when you're shopping. So definitely the FN SKU is all that's needed with Amazon, because they just want to be able to identify your product within their warehouse, and that's why you would want to provide that to your supplier, just because it could be in the packaging already. You could have the design already included on that, and they would just print it off, and it usually is the most economical way of being able to start to label your product, is to have the supplier do it, not have Amazon do it. Because if they do charge a fee, if anything, it's kind of included in the printing, and you probably won't want to stick with too many colors, so that will save you some money. It'll just be like black and like a black barcode on a cardboard box or something like that.
Yeah, well said. Alrighty guys, we're gonna wrap it up there. So remember, if you've got some value from this episode or this AMA, make sure to give us a big thumbs up below. Also, make sure to subscribe and hit that little bell icon, which means you'll get notified every time we launch a new episode of the case study, or we're going live like this. If you're considering to start selling, make sure to get your Cyber Monday deal. That's in the description below. Now is a great time to get started selling on Amazon. Again, you've got the $1 Million Case Study as a resource. You can do it alongside of me. The other thing as well is that you really want to get started soon. You want to get started now, because in February, Chinese factories will close down for Chinese New Year for like 3 weeks or so. So you want to make sure that you start your product research now, find a product, get samples, go through that entire process so that you can get your order in and your product made before that time. So now is a perfect time to start, and we've got a deal for you to help you guys out. All right, so thanks again for joining today. Been an absolute pleasure answering your questions, and we will see you next time, guys. Bye.
Keep crushing it, Freedom Builders.